Broadcasting from Montebello Studios in beautiful Baltimore, Maryland. This is the Bern Notice. Ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Justin Sindel.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the inaugural edition of the Bern Notice. My name is Justin Sindel. I'm proud to be with you. We are going to talk today on the program about how the knives are out in mainstream media. It's not just for Bernie, it's for Tulsi too. Yet again, they're gaslighting progressives. I'm surprised, said nobody ever. I'm going to recap People's Wave 2019, People's Action. We're going to do some speaker recaps, talk a little bit about Jumaane Williams, who was there, Pramila Jayapal, Ro Khanna, and of course Bernie. We're going to talk about shutting it down at the EPA, Congress, and a partnership for America's healthcare future. We're going to have an interview with MiriJane about her poll that went viral, and we're going to talk about a local story, chaos at Johns Hopkins, and Baltimore police overwhelmingly use force again, and yet another reason we should listen to the kids. All this and more on the first edition of the Bern Notice. Now, as I've said, this is the inaugural edition, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So, as I've been starting this, I have noticed so many bugs and delays and issues that have cropped up, and it's very much a work in progress. This new setup is proving to be interesting. I like my new digs here, but there's still some kinks that I'm working out. So, I'm trying to, for example, set up and do some recording, and I record a 17-minute segment, and my audio is a second delayed, and I have to go back to the drawing board and do it all again. I'm going to be trying to push more content out of here. I will keep you posted on the schedule as far as that is concerned. But definitely, if you want more content, hit the like button, subscribe, get the notifications turned on, send me a comment. I might do something as far as pulling up comments and doing deep dives into subjects based on that. So that would be a good way to get somebody to expound upon your topic for 15, 20 minutes or something. I know this is called the Bern Notice. Frankly, people have been waiting as long as this. It seems like they were waiting for Duke Nukem forever, so hopefully I don't disappoint that bad. But just because it's called the Bern Notice doesn't mean it'll be Bernie only. We're going to talk about, Tulsi and Nina and the whole crew and AOC, and we'll talk about Justice Democrats. We'll talk a little bit about what's going on in the news. I'm not just going to limit it to be Bernie, but I do want Bernie to be a focal point of this. So if you are a Bernie 2020 supporter, you probably will get something out of this. I started this, to be honest with you, because I got tired of not having any outlets for people to talk about Bernie and his policies, and I was bothered by the blackout. So, and I'm bothered by the fact that they're blacking out Tulsi in 2020. So it will be stories about everything from life on the road to, talking to Bernie supporters, covering those, major stories and issues and doing deep dives. I'm going to be adding to this all the time. But if you do have any questions, feel free to send them along at charmcitypodcast@gmail.com. And if you're wondering a little bit about me, so I'm an activist, an organizer. I got politically active in 2015, partly due to a local campaign here, partly due to Bernie. So I had considered a run for public office. I may still do that at some point. I'm on the steering committee of Our Revolution Baltimore. I'm an organizing fellow for Progressive Maryland. I worked on the Ben Jealous campaign over the last cycle. So I've seen a little bit of the inside and the outside of the party dynamics. And I grew up as a AV junkie, and doing a setup like this and potentially doing videos like this was a dream of mine. So I'm stoked to finally be able to do that. I plan to offer some content as far as progressive talk. I'll probably end up getting on and Twitch streaming some live chat and some Let's Plays and stuff like that. But hopefully this is going to be a hub for Maryland progressive talk. I'm hoping, as far as the network itself, that we expand and we start talking about things that are going on in Annapolis and other things that are going on in Washington, D.C. I got Twitter going. That's at CCPNNetwork, and you can use the hashtag Bern Notice Podcast. That's BERN Notice. I'm working on the Instagram, Facebook, Patreon. All that's coming within a week or two. Right now, you can hit us up on Cashapp and Venmo at $CCPN Network, and you can follow us at CCPN Network on Twitter. All of those are up, and more will be coming soon. So by all means, stay tuned. I've got some cool and interesting stuff coming down the pipeline for all you folks at home. So I'd like to thank you, and now we'll move forward, and I'm looking forward to it. Have something to say? Let us know. Send us a tweet at CCPN Network. Leave us a comment on our YouTube channel, Charm City Podcast Network, or send us a tweet with the hashtag The Bern Notice. We'd love to hear from you. Alright, so as I said, the knives are out yet again for the progressives and mainstream media. And I think it's funny in a sad way. I'm probably blocked by half of Never Bernie Twitter, and let me tell you, my social media experience has been so much better because of that. We've heard all this before. We heard about oh, well, Bernie was never vetted. These same people who don't realize that, Washington Post released 13 negative articles in 13 days. These are the same people who every week the new candidate comes out, and they're the ones who jump to that new candidate. And they're 3%, 4%, 5% for this one candidate. They were all in on Kirsten Gillibrand. They said, oh, she goes after Trump. And then they were all in on Kamala Harris. And then they were all in on Pete Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke and Elizabeth Warren, and now they're all in on Seth Moulton. No. They're all in on Joe Biden now. These are also, ironically, the same people who screamed about Bernie's taxes, and then April 16th rolls around and nothing. Just crickets. Chirp, chirp, chirp. They honestly, the hive mind really scares me there. They all say the same thing. They all act patronizing. They all go and say, oh, you go back to your whatever, sweetie, or hun. It's like, you haven't earned that right to talk to me like that. You are not going to talk to me like a condescending hack. And that's why the more and more of these people I run into, the more and more I think they can't be reasoned with, because they're paid not to reason with you. They are just paid to make you say something to further this narrative that somehow progressives are the fucking problem in this country. That somehow the people who want to give us healthcare and education and, you know, make sure that we have a program like Medicare for All where no matter what you make, you're still covered. Somehow these people are the problem, not the people who are bombing 8 countries and who are trying to blame anything they can for the rise of Donald Trump except for the fact that they suck. So, their goal is to get to a brokered convention. That way the DNC can pick their nominee and we're all screwed. And then we're told, oh, just go, you know, just take it. Just take it. Just go, you know, you better vote blue no matter who. Well, if blue's a fascie and red's a fascie, I hold no obligation to vote for either of them. That's why I'm a member of one of the parties, so that I can make sure that shit don't happen. Our goal has to be to get to a brokered convention. We need to pull 55 to 60% of people behind somebody like Bernie or Tulsi or, whoever. I know a lot of people like Andrew Yang. I'm not that up on him, but we need to fill this lane. We need to fill the progressive lane and say, we are not going to be shouted out this time. We saw what happened in 2016, never again. And frankly, look, I don't want to be anywhere near DC and the DNC headquarters if, for example, they rigged the primary again and people know about it and people find out, because they will, because this is the internet. They will find out about it. It will come out. It will come out in the wash. You will not like what you hear. So unless unless that is the case, unless you are willing to go 55 to 60% for the progressive candidate in 40 of 51 contests, unless you do that, they are going to take this to a broker convention and they are going to rig the primary again and they're going to shiv us again and then blame us when we don't want to vote for their candidate. Because their candidate is just going to do the same thing that Donald Trump is doing, but put a smiling face on it. We're not okay with that. If you give me that, I'm going to tell you to shove it back where it came from. All right. And one of the biggest things that bothers me about this is that these people, they just want to talk about Russia. They want to equate everybody to Russia. Oh my God. Bernie had a video in Russia in 1988 where he's sitting there drunk on his honeymoon singing. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Like, aren't you supposed to go have fun? Look, the one thing I could say is that the troll farms do not equal victories. If any other country did what Russia did, it would be improper lobbying and a slap on the wrist at best. The mainstream media, they want war to profit off of. That is how they do this. And that's also why they are blacking out Tulsi Gabbard. They are running the same playbook they ran in 2016 on one of the most progressive candidates running. Also, they're saying she's not a real Democrat. Where have I heard that before? But she was the vice chair of the DNC. So tell me how that works. You're either the vice chair or you're not a real one, but you can't be not a real Democrat, but the vice chair of the DNC. That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. Have you heard anything other than from her official social media, which she just put it out today, I think, about this bill, the Off Fossil Fuels by 2035 Act, that actually is binding legislation? This is actually a binding part of the Green New Deal. This is creating renewable energy jobs. This is by 2027, you have to reduce your CO2 and not your nitric oxide and your methane emissions, that all of your emissions have to be capped at 20% of what they are. They need an 80% reduction. This is one of the bills that National Nurses United, not a sponsor, but the signs on the wall, say is one of their top 5 priorities. This is actual binding Green New Deal legislation. As I said, it funds renewable energy sources. It absolutely hard caps the amount of emissions we are letting off. And you don't hear anything about this. You hear about the non-binding resolution. You hear about the overarching one that AOC did. This is a binding part of this deal. And you hear nothing about this. They're not talking about her domestic policy. All they are doing is try to hammer her on foreign policy and say she's an Assad apologist, she's a Modi apologist, she's this and that. If you're against Assad and you want to topple Assad and Assad is fighting ISIS, does that mean you are for ISIS? I'm not sure here. Does that mean you are for more destabilization? Look, we support 74% of the world's dictatorships. This is not hard to understand. They just want war. They want war with Iran. They want to destabilize the whole area. They want war in Syria. They love constant war. It makes them money. So I get tired of people saying, oh, she's a friend of Steve Bannon. Trumpers like her. Okay, well, guess what? Trumpers also voted for somebody who said that Iraq and Afghanistan were foreign policy mistakes. So maybe that is part of the policy that we could say, oh, well, guess what? Broken clocks are right twice a day. If that's one of the things I agree with Trumpers on, is that we shouldn't be in these foreign countries having these stupid wars for oil, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. Welcome to the fold. I do not care. That's fine by me. And I get tired of people saying that she's a hawk, that she only wants war. That actually, no, that's that projection thing that you do. That's you saying what you trying to say that your opponent believes what you really believe. And this entire foreign policy talk is just contrived. It's to stop people talking about her domestic agenda. She's actually right on foreign policy, and she actually gets it. And I wouldn't expect any less from somebody who's gone over there and seen it for themselves. So I don't know when they're going to learn. I don't know when they're going to get it. They tried the same thing in 2004. They tried the same thing in 2016. They're scared of us. They are scared of us. 2016, they thought we were stupid. They're blaming 311,000 people who voted for Jill Stein in 8 states rather than trying to turn out 1% to 2% more of the electorate. They are trying to, they tried to run up the score. As they said, they tried to run up the score. This is the DNC. This is the genius of the Clinton camp. They are trying to run up the score, and they lost ground in 41 of 51 states from 2012. We got wiped out. We lost 1,000 seats in state legislatures across the country. We lost the Congress. We lost both houses of the Congress. We had everything at one point. We blew it. We're back to square one. It didn't work because people started to see through the veneer of Obama's talk. People started to see through what he was saying and what he was actually doing. And all this this talk, this smearing people and forcing people to vote, oh, you better vote the lesser of two evils. That didn't work in 2016. That didn't work in 2004. That mentality has gotten the Democrats wiped out. We need to stand for something, not on something, and not for nothing. If we don't do that, we will lose again. And look, they don't care. They're millionaires. They know where their bread's buttered. They'd probably rather, in the mainstream media and the DNC, have 4 more years of Donald Trump than 4 years of Bernie or Tulsi. And we got to start fighting like it is. We got to start fighting and taking the fight to them and saying, that's not good enough. Hell no. We're not going to deal with that. Because they're going to get tax breaks. They're gonna be able to raise more money and keep their jobs. They're trying to deflect and distract from their own lack of policies. Nancy Pelosi is so busy gaslighting progressives that she just absolutely has no clue of the wins of where her district is and should be. I hope somebody goes out there and challenges her. I hope that somebody challenges Schumer when he's up. I hope Michaela Wilkes, you should go donate to her, by the way. I hope Michaela Wilkes knocks out Steny Hoyer down in Maryland's 5th, right down the road from me. Because I know it can be done. Because I know this is our party. It's not their party. It belongs to the people. And we need to take this party and turn it back into the party of FDR, back into the party of the New Deal, back into the party of the Great Society, and not the Great Compromise. I don't want to come to the table asking for half of what I deserve. I want to come to the table asking for 125% of what I deserve. And I think you all want the same. I don't want more people trying to bargain with Republicans who only take. If they're not willing to give, then I have no desire to negotiate with them. You have to be willing to negotiate with somebody in good faith. And frankly, over the last 10 years or so, probably longer than that, but definitely over the last 10 years, it seems like the Republicans have turned that to 11, and they're not willing to negotiate. They're not willing to represent their interests honestly. We already have one party that is of the bosses. We need to bring the Democrats to be the party of the workers, not the party of mid-level bosses. Anyway, like I said, they'd rather 4 more years of Donald Trump where they can fundraise and they can make money and they can sit up on their high horse than they would 4 years of Bernie or Tulsi, because Bernie or Tulsi would go after them. And that's what I want. I want somebody who's willing to go after them and take the fight to them. We deserve that. As Americans, we deserve a fighter in our corner. And damn it, I hope when everybody votes in next year in 2020, I hope we get that fighter. I really do. We need it now more than ever. We need somebody who's not just going to put the talk in, but put the walk in as well. And that's why the only 2 people I think would do that are Bernie and Tulsi. And it just bothers me. It bothers me to see that they're just going to shiv us and try to bend us over a barrel again, because I'm sick and tired of it. I've had enough. You know, as Bernie says, enough is enough. We need to go back after them. And we got to do it all together. We got to make sure we're all working on the same page, because they want to split us up. I don't know how it ended. I haven't checked, but I took the Daily Kos poll, and now they are making people sign their email up for their network of spam emails and supporting corporatist Democrats to quote remake the party and to primary somebody like Tulsi. So I don't want to hear about Daily Kos. So I sent it in as unsubscribe@me.com. So have fun, unsubscribe. But now that they're doing that, they're suppressing the enthusiasm of that poll and making it even less worthy. But I'm sure they were getting some calls about why Bernie was so popular in that poll. And now, now a lot of people are it was almost, tied between Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. But to be honest, I don't think there's a comparison when you consider what happened in 2016. We know one of them's going to fight for us. We don't know if one of them's going to put their neck out there on the line for us. I think that's the difference. So, moving forward now.
Support this podcast. Like and subscribe to this page on YouTube. And be sure to follow us on Twitter at CCPNNetwork. And just remember, the best nation in the world is a donation. You can donate via Cashapp or Venmo at $CCPN Network.
All right. I promised y'all I was going to recap People's Actions, People's Wave 2019. I'm going to do the best I can. Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, myself and my colleague Sheila Ruth went down to People's Actions, People's Wave 2019. And we were both invited from Progressive Maryland. She's the co-chair of Our Revolution, Baltimore City County. And we went as kind of a cohort. We kind of threw it together at the last minute. The opening day, me and her sat down, got a chance to talk a little bit about plans for our local chapter. We get down to DC that opening night. Larry Stafford, our friend and compatriot in the fight of Progressive Maryland, he is the executive director. He's the big boss at Progressive Maryland, and he helped introduce all the groups and gave half of the opening speech there. We did one breakout session. I went to a fascinating session about the opioid crisis and how it ties everybody together. All of us need to realize how interconnected we all are, and that when there are problems in rural areas, they directly affect problems in urban areas. Now, as I can attest to, being in Baltimore, we are not far from West Virginia, where all of the OxyContin and the hydrocodones and Vicodins were all sent out that way. So I know how quickly and easily they can spread out from there and go from there to Cumberland, to Frederick, to Washington, D.C., to Baltimore, to Annapolis. It ties all of us together in such a way because so many of us know somebody who is no longer with us because of this opioid crisis. And this has been the case for 50 years. It's just spreading now more than ever because more and more people are getting addicted now than ever because we have done worse as a country to take care of the neediest of us, to take care of those who need it. We have criminalized and we have subjugated people to life as second-class citizens instead of welcoming them back into our community and trying to get them the help that they need, that a lot of times they are actually asking for. They're just not getting it. So that was my first session there. It was on the opioid crisis. I come back to Baltimore, get about 3 hours of sleep by the time I get everything together. Leave it around 6 o'clock in the morning and start on day 2 with the main guest from day 2. The star of the show was Pramila Jayapal, who was the woman who introduced the Medicare for All bill in the House. But she wasn't just talking about that. She was talking about her background as an organizer, how she had been in the movement for 30 years, pushing and knocking on doors and pulling people together, pulling people into this fold. So that was really, it was a huge breath of fresh air. And it was really cool to see that somebody who thought like us, and when I say us, I mean working people, young, old, black, white, brown, legal, undocumented, you name it. We had somebody that looked like and felt like the spirit of America there. And we had people from all walks of life. We had people from New York City and, rural North Carolina. We had people of all races, genders, ethnicities, backgrounds, all there for a common purpose. And that was really good to see. And as I said, it was a breath of fresh air. I ended up needing it because in our breakout session, which was titled Radical Democracy, it was about redemption and healing. And it was an absolute gut punch. It took me an hour plus to pull my heart out of my throat after hearing and participating in that discussion. And I couldn't have got up and talked to the group if I tried, because I was so choked up by what I was hearing from people all across the country about what not only what their lives were like, but if they were victimized by this vicious cycle that our country is on, to hear about how and to hear about their healing. And it was, we screened half of Van Jones's show on CNN about redemption. There goes the other camera. We streamed half of that episode, and we shared stories from some of the co-hosts. One was a healer in Michigan, absolutely brought strength to this discussion where we needed it. And given how many people have been hurt, given how many people have been through the criminal justice system and the cycle of incarceration, I think everybody could use something like this. I wish I had recorded it and streamed it, but it was a session that absolutely hit home. And I don't care who you are. I think you could gain something out of talking about redemption, talking about really how to welcome people back into society who have screwed up, who have been incarcerated, and starting the cycle of decarceration and breaking that down and making sure that people, when they come home, they don't end up going right back. That was the only breakout session I got to go to that day. I'm so glad I did, though. I had to come back actually because I had an event that I went to and Sheila went to and helped host with Jonathan Patz, who helped write the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change Reports. It was hosted by Baltimore County Progressive Democrats Club, and it was about the health opportunities that we can have by fixing the climate crisis. For example, for every $30 we spend to fix our climate crisis, we get back at least $200 in health savings down the line currently. And the more we're spending on our climate to fix it, the less we actually overall spend on healthcare. We don't have people who are breathing dirty air and drinking dirty water and then having the ramifications from it. When when cities and suburbs are more amenable to walking and biking and rideshare and less about driving, when you have more bus lanes, more streetcars, more subways, you end up walking more, you end up biking more, you end up driving less, and people get more active as a result. So they lose weight, so they have, and they're healthier, so they are able to keep their healthcare costs down more and better than people who are in spread out areas, people who live in suburban sprawl that's not really designed for people to bike or walk through it. This is why people who live in New York City and Washington, D.C. are much healthier overall than people who live in, Huntsville, Alabama. No offense, Huntsville. Than people who live in Baltimore, for example. We're not exactly the most walkable or public transit accessible city, even though we've got top 20 ridership. That's another topic for another show. We'll get there. But it made me realize you can't have a Green New Deal if you do not have healthcare for all, and you can't have healthcare for all without a Green New Deal. The two actually work hand in hand. They have to, because the way we are going to curb the climate crisis is to take steps locally, regionally, and nationally to make sure that people can they can get around more. You spend less when you maintain a car than when it breaks down and you got to spend thousands of dollars in the shop for it. Your body is the same way. So when you do more maintenance and just upkeep and less, things are failing, I'm having health problems because I'm overweight and live, a sedentary lifestyle. You can't have one without the other. That doesn't work. And that talk was huge. I highly recommend you look up his TEDx talk. It's at Jonathan Patz. And yes, by all means, it's about 13, 14 minutes long. But it was absolutely great. And I'd like to thank again, Baltimore County Progressive Democrats Club for having me there. So again, we do 3 hours of sleep, leaving Baltimore even earlier this time for the third day of #People's Wave, which was our day of action. But we also had an absolutely awesome panel. We had Jumaane Williams, we had Ro Khanna, and yes, we also had Bernie Sanders. And all three of them were absolutely great. I wish I could remember more people that were on the panel, but there are pictures, and I was live tweeting it at Justin in Bmore. So if you want, you can go back and find them. But I'll give you a quick recap here. Jumaane Williams absolutely stole the show. He would be a great mayor of New York. He opened his segment up by saying, fuck Trump, fuck those who voted for Trump, and fuck the corporate Democrats that led us to him. Which absolutely set the tone for the rest of his speech. He totally brought the thunder. He was very, very impactful. I'm sure if you search it, you can find people who had his speech. I highly encourage you to listen to him. As I said, he'll make a great mayor of New York one day. Definitely potential to do more than that. So definitely keep your eye out for him. We had Ro Khanna speaking with a member of San Francisco Rising, and when they were asking if Ro was going to support Medicare for all, he said, of course, and he said, will you promise to hold me accountable for my votes and for my actions, which was just prescient. You don't hear legislators who are willing to go out on a limb and say, yes, hold me accountable. Hold my feet to the fire. If you see something that I don't, be my eyes and ears and let me know. And I really appreciated that. I found this was really ironic. Of course, we had Bernie Sanders speak. You can find the whole video on my social media. Bernie Sanders spoke to 1,000 organizers nationwide the day that Biden was having a fundraiser with Comcast and Blue Cross Blue Shield executives to raise big money. Now you tell me. One goes and speaks to a crowd of 1,000 organizers, young and old, of all shapes and sizes and races and genders and you name it. One goes and speaks to the big pharma lobby and to Comcast, who has been voted the most hated company in America. Who do you think is really on your side? Who do you think is going to work for you? As opposed to working for the oligarchy, for working for big media firms to get even bigger, for working for people who make 20, 30, 40 million dollars and then tell you you can't have basic health care, you can't have good quality customer service because they took all the money and spent it on a yacht with its own yacht. Who's working for us? The one who's going to speak to organizers who are going to go do the work in their neighborhoods, in their cities, in their states, in their counties, all across this country, or the one who says, oh, well, I don't understand. Millennials need to stop whining. Jesus H. Christ. Maybe if you were listening to what we were saying, you wouldn't say it was whining. If you want whiny, it sounds like what a lot of people who act like Joe Biden have to say about the progressive wing. It's Nancy Pelosi saying, oh, well, that's like 5 people, and calling it the green dream when otherwise we're going to be living in a fucking nightmare. It's people like Adam Schiff who keep pushing us towards war with Russia, but he took $100,000 last cycle from the military-industrial complex. It's people like that. It's people who push this Russiagate narrative just to goad us into more war with Iran and Venezuela so that we can relive Cold War 2.0 because the mainstream media is making a whole lot of money off of it. They are making money hand over fist, and the war machine is just a churning along. They love it. They love how they co-opted Donald Trump. They love how they didn't have an anti-war candidate on the ballot in all 50 states because a lot of people couldn't vote for a Green Party candidate. They love that shit. They're eating it up right now. So we left after that. After Bernie spoke, you can go watch my video. We left to go raise some hell. We went into the Partnership for America's Healthcare Future, and we marched right into their lobby, overflowed their lobby, and shut it down. And we were protesting for Medicare for all. We were protesting for single-payer healthcare, the thing we desperately need in this country, the thing that is going to save us trillions of dollars over the next generation plus. We are going to get this, and we are going to shut them down every chance they get. Twitter is already on this. Twitter already has them ratioed to oblivion every single time they post. You've got 20 likes and 300 comments, and everybody is just saying, hell no, we need Medicare for all. We need single-payer health care. We need to negotiate our drug prices, and they need to stop bending us over a goddamn barrel. Now, after this, we went to the EPA, and we told them that we need people who are going to care about our planet. And what did they do? They sent the yard crew out to mow the lawn. They went and decided, hey, look at these bastards. We're gonna run the mowers out here, and they can deal with the fumes and the grass. They don't care to hear about it. They need to hear about it, but they don't care to hear about it. They don't want to hear from us, but damn it, they're going to hear from us. They need to hear from you too. Same with the Partnership for America's Healthcare Industry's Future. They need to hear from you too. Every single time they put up one of those promoted tweets or messages, every single time you see them out trying to shiv Medicare for all, you need to be able to say, hell no, you shut the fuck up. We need Medicare for all in this country because we need actual health care that doesn't allow for companies to make huge profits on these drugs that they make with our technologies, like the EpiPen. We need a plan that actually encompasses comprehensive dental care in this damn country. We need a plan that negotiates drug prices. We need a plan that's actually going to take care of Americans, head to toe. And yeah, that includes your genitalia too. We need to take care of your junk too. So after we did that, we took it to Capitol Hill, where we went back in and we started talking about why we need Medicare for all, and we took it to Congress. We also managed to pass our friend in the fight, Ilhan Omar, who was having an event out on the lawn. And it was really cool to see. I met Ilhan in 2015 when she was running for Minnesota State Senate, and we were both at a PCCC national candidate training in Washington, D.C. And at that time, I was just like, hey, what's up? We sat outside the place every time they had a break because I was vaping at the time, and it was the only thing that ever got me to quit smoking. And she was still smoking cigarettes at the time. I don't know if she's quit or not. Maybe y'all should ask her. Tell her at Justin and B More wondered if you quit smoking. But no, we were just, they crunched 4 days of information, but really it was about 2 weeks worth of stuff. And they crunched all that into 4 days, and we were just overwhelmed at the end of it. And we just came out and I don't know if I could do this. There's a lot. There's so much. And we were just overwhelmed with all the information. They do such a great job. I wish they had 2 weeks to teach all those classes because all of them are useful. So we passed that event. That was really cool. And shortly after, we had to come back for other events here in Baltimore. Sheila had to testify at the budget meeting, and I had stuff to do here. So we had to hightail it back. We didn't want to be stuck in DC traffic coming out. And frankly, I could not blame either of us. It was an insane 3 days that were just jam-packed, and I don't regret it at all. It was fantastic. It was a great event. I'm so grateful to People's Action and to Progressive Maryland for letting me do that. And I really learned a lot. I feel like my soul got cleansed and refreshed from it. And I was really impressed. I was wowed the whole way through. So, and I encourage you, get active in your local neighborhoods. Do these meetups. Do this civic engagement on the ground level, because we need fighters. And if you're watching this, chances are you are that. So we need you to get in the fight. Go find local groups. Get active. That's what this is all about. We can't do this if everybody doesn't work together on it. We can't do this without you. And we certainly can't do this if people sit around with their thumb up their ass saying, we don't know what the hell to do. We're tired of voting for lesser of two evils, but we don't see any other option. We're giving you the other option. We need to get up and we need to get the ball rolling, and we need to get as many people active as we can. And the more we do that, the better it's going to be. So, all right, coming up, we've got, and I'm going to start the video here in a minute, but we've got my interview with MiriJane about her poll that went viral, asking Bernie supporters if Bernie's not the nominee, what's going to happen. So it was a really cool conversation, and I'm going to cue it up next. So yeah, awesome. Have something to say? Let us know. Send us a tweet at CCPNNetwork. Leave us a comment on our YouTube channel, the Charm City Podcast Network, or send us a tweet with the hashtag The Bern Notice. We'd love to hear from you. And aka MiriJane, she's from Flagstaff, Arizona, and she put up a pretty prescient poll about the sentiments of Bernie 2020 supporters. Say hi there.
Hi everyone, I'm Miranda.
So real quick, what led you to make this poll? Like, what were your, sentiments leading into it?
Well, I was curious because, in 2016, when the DNC did what they did, there was a lot of Bernie supporters that were like, what do we do? What do we do? There was a lot of people that Dem exited. There was a lot of people that, bit the bullet and voted for Hillary anyways. I personally, I voted for Jill Stein.
I can't fault you for that at all, honestly, because to me, I was always told that, if you're getting a candidate to 5%, that doesn't count as a wasted vote. I think there were more out there that got suppressed from their votes for Jill Stein than would be led to believe by just the numbers. So I can't fault you for that. I know why. And I mean, especially given the, for every voter we lose in the Rust Belt, we're going to gain one in the suburbs of Philadelphia and Arizona, pretty much. So were you surprised by any of the results? What kind of takeaways did you have from when people started responding? I know we talked off air before about this thing blowing up and becoming bigger than you had ever imagined. I was kind of surprised by it. So I just want to know kind of what your take was.
Well, the biggest surprise for me was the very few number of people that voted they weren't going to vote at all. That showed me that perhaps we were coming over that apathy. That why should I vote? My vote doesn't count. That was the biggest takeaway. And then the second biggest takeaway was we don't really have any sort of plan going forward if the DNC pulls these shenanigans again. I mean, excuse me, the biggest on the poll, it was write in Bernie. That was the biggest answer. And then the other two were not far behind. So it seems like we as a Bernie movement are split on what we're going to do if.
And that, I mean, I hate to say it, the knives are already out. It's happening. This is why there are 18 corporate candidates. They are blacking out Tulsi Gabbard. They are blacking out Andrew Yang. They're talking Elizabeth Warren, but she still said she was a capitalist to her core. And I don't think you can square the two. I don't think you can square somebody who says they were a capitalist to their core, who didn't give a good answer during the town hall that just happened on CNN a couple weeks ago about her upbringing and becoming a Republican and then going and being a Democrat. I don't think there was a good answer there. I watched that whole 5-hour bender of town halls, and I was disappointed in that answer. And I don't get where people are saying, oh, this was so great. This was so great. I don't see it.
I like the policy platform that Liz is putting forward.
I agree.
I don't trust
good. There's really good policies there. But that's also why I think she should stay in the Senate to continue introducing these policies.
Yeah, I after what she did in 2016, she really alienated a lot of the progressive base, and a lot of us just don't trust her.
I agree. And you know, there were so many, especially leading up to the Massachusetts primary, like, please, Liz, just do this. It's going to push Bernie over the top. And she didn't. She bit her tongue, and we saw what happened. Not to mention parading around Bill and Hillary to the polling places in Massachusetts. I'm sorry. That is voter tampering. That shit shouldn't fly.
Yeah, no, that was when she didn't endorse Bernie. My first thought was, what did Hillary promise you?
And I absolutely understand your sentiment. Do you think you mentioned there were three options? Everybody said they were going to vote, but it kind of got broke down, and you know, primarily people said write in Bernie, and then you know there were the other two options there were pretty much neck and neck.
Yeah.
They were really close to each other, though. They probably would, you'd probably call them within the margin of error. Do you think that sentiment amongst Bernie supporters will change leading up to the primaries?
I think it's going to depend. I think it's going to depend on how the debates go. Because if Tulsi comes forward in the debates and is strong, or if Liz comes forward and is strong, that could change things, because people might be more willing to be like, okay, well, it's not Bernie, but, you know, Tulsi's talking this way, and, you know, or Liz is talking this way, or whatever. I think that could change.
I think it's if I couldn't have Bernie, I would say Tulsi's our best bet. She absolutely nails it, and she is one of the most clear about where her votes came from and what she was thinking at the time. I've always had a lot of respect for that. And I find it very funny, too, that these people who say, well, she's not even a Democrat. She was the former vice chair of the DNC.
Yeah. Oh, she's not even a Democrat, but, you know, she walked away from leadership position to support Bernie.
And because the primary was rigged. Anyway.
This whole real Democrat thing drives me nuts, because it's like, Joe Manchin's a real Democrat.
Yeah, Joe Manchin
is a real Democrat.
Manchin, Crowley, Claire McCaskill, Joe Donnelly. These are the reasons why the Democratic Party is 6 points underwater nationwide. This is why there are more independents who are left-leaning at this point than Democrats themselves. You're talking, I think, 26% of the nationwide electorate is registered as Democrat. I am one of those. I'm also in a one-party rule state, so it's a little different here. If you don't vote in the Democratic primary, you oftentimes don't get a vote. And that's part of the problem with one-party rule. That's part of the reason why we're pushing for ranked choice voting here in Maryland. So we can break that and we can say no more spoilers. I wanted to ask you a little bit, because I know anytime you do something like this, you get some feedback, you get some comments. What kind of comments have you received? What kind of feedback have you heard? Good, bad, ugly, doesn't matter to me. I just want you to air it. That's all.
on the more left side, I got flack for, I guess, not having enough options on my poll.
We're limited. It's Twitter. There's 4. You
it's
get
like,
4.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of room for different options on a Twitter poll. And like I said before, I didn't expect it to blow up. I expected it just to stay within, you know, my 200 followers. And so I had to explain that to some people. I was like, there's not a lot of room here for me to, you know, put everything. And surprisingly, I didn't get as much backlash from the centrists. There was some. I think the biggest reply was, so you want Trump to win?
No, that's why we want to elect Bernie or Tulsi or a true progressive leftist, because you don't beat a fake populist with a centrist, you beat them with a real populist.
I mean, didn't we learn that last year? or last election, like,
I mean,
they ran a status quo candidate in a populist race and they lost.
some people just don't want to admit that they were wrong, and they will never admit that they were wrong. And you just have to understand this. You have to realize they're not going to give up power. We have to usurp power from them to give it back to the people. Because guess
Absolutely.
what? Because they're in bed with the same people that the Republicans are. They really are. They're in bed with the same people. They've got the same donors. You still have pharma. You still have fossil fuels. You're still killing the planet. You're still not giving us Medicare for all. You're still not giving us a Green New Deal. And until we say, no, you are not entitled to our damn vote,
Yes.
you are not going to get our vote without giving us our platform. We want certain things. This is not a negotiation process where I think this time around, I don't think the left is going to capitulate. I don't think they are going to go lay down without a fight. I think they were scared of Donald Trump before. I think they say, if you are stupid enough to do the same thing again and expect different results, then pound sand.
Exactly. One of the centrists that responded to that poll, we got into it a little bit, and she was like, how could you not just vote blue no matter who, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, it is the Democratic Party's job to earn my vote. It is not my job to fall in line and bow to their corporate donor campaign nonsense. That's not my job. That's not how democracy works.
And I would like to add to that, it is, however, our job to push them and push them and push them and make
Absolutely.
Sure if they dig their heels in the sand, we'll push them over, we'll primary them, like Michaela Wilkes, who is running against Steny Hoyer in the 5th District, who is tired of this. We can only do so much. We can't do this. We can't do. No, we can't is not a platform that anybody I know wants to get behind. Which actually, your comment brings me to my next question, which is the vote blue no matter who contingent. What's your thoughts on them? I know that's kind of probably leaves a bad taste in your mouth, but I have to ask.
I think it splits into, there's like 3 different groups within the blue no matter who. There are those that are gonna vote for anyone with the D next to their name because they're party over people. They don't give a damn. They care about their team.
Mm-hmm.
There are those that are scared of Trump and their number one goal is defeat Trump at all costs. That's just the way it is. Like,
I mean, my 77-year-old grandfather, he says, a dried up pile of cat poop is probably better than Donald Trump. While that's the case, my state is going blue anyway. And if they don't listen to me, they can have my party resignation. It's that simple.
That's what I did in 2016. In 2016, I voted in Oregon.
Okay.
Oregon went Bernie in the primary.
Yes.
And our lovely superdelegate, Miss Kate Brown, the governor of Oregon, she went to Hillary. And the bulk of the delegates went to Hillary in Oregon, even though Bernie took the primary.
And it was not even close, if I remember correctly.
No, it was not close.
That reminds me of what happened in neighboring West Virginia. Actually, since I mentioned off air, I was at People's Wave 2019 with about 1,000 activists, and one of them ran a breakout session about how to make the Democratic Party more democratic. This person was a West Virginia pledged delegate. West Virginia went 55 of 55 counties. She was the one in Fahrenheit 11.9. And my colleague went to that, and I ended up going to a different one. But I heard this really dug deep into the roots of the DNC and how we bring power from that system back to the people. And it starts by avoiding a brokered convention. We need to get the progressive wing to unify and get behind Bernie. And I'm sure that Tulsi will. I don't know a lot about Andrew Yang. I'm concerned about that, but I I'm pretty sure Gravel's going to keep pushing, keep adding that leftist pressure. And I think that's I believe me, I think we need that. We need to keep our candidates' feet to the fire and their toes tingling a little bit as well. It's really important, because if we don't do that, we don't hold them accountable, then when it comes to the centrists, we really can't hold them accountable. I was, like I said, we had a couple people who were calling out Bernie legitimately for not mentioning, strengthening, enhancing the ADA, not mentioning, making sure that in that infrastructure bill, there's ways for, physical disability folk to get around. And I think that's a valid complaint. I listen to, I'm as big a Bernie fan as anybody, but I try to listen to legitimate complaints. Not he's a Russian puppet, but that's that's illegitimate. But when you say he can speak more about the community with disabilities, that's legitimate. So we do need to continue pressuring our delegation, our progressive caucus, to make sure that they are representing all of us all together. And I think that's super important. I kind of have one more question written down here for you.
Okay.
Do you think that if the DNC screws over Bernie again, do you think that would be enough to really start a true People's Party, like a third party? I had a discussion a little while ago about what would have happened if Teddy Roosevelt won under the Bull Moose Party. And we theorized that if that had happened, we would be looking at having at least a progressive wing of a party that would be well represented. If not, we might not be in a full three-party system, but it could have decimated the Democratic Party as currently constituted, which is an interesting thought. Do you think that would be enough to try to start a People's Party and get candidates on the ballot in all 50 states?
I think that is a difficult question, because as we've seen, just with my poll, the progressive base is kind of split on what we're going to do. I know that if the DNC does screw Bernie over, there's going to be a lot of rage.
There was a lot of rage before. There's going to be even more this time.
Yeah, no, I think there's going to be a lot more. I'm kind of wondering if at the convention and they screw Bernie over, we're not going to have a repeat of the '68 convention when there were riots in the streets.
I've said, I totally agree with you on that point. It is scary to think of what could happen if they pull the same shenanigans again. I've said I want to be nowhere near DNC headquarters, because I think we're looking at mutiny. I think we're looking at people walking the plank.
I don't think that I want to be near any big city if that happens. Can you imagine riots like on the Ferguson scale across the United States?
I live in Baltimore. I went through this. I know. I know. I went through this. This is actually, we're a couple days after the 4-year anniversary of Freddie Gray and the riots in Baltimore. So believe me, that sentiment is not lost on me. But go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
No, you're all right. I think that maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe that's the only way we get the Democratic establishment to listen to us, because we've had to do that before. We have had to rise up and be like getting violent and be like, no, you're not listening to us. And maybe if we did it on a mass scale, they would actually listen. But
Well,
maybe not, you know?
I mean, John F. Kennedy said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. And I am very much concerned if we go to a brokered convention in 2020 and the super delegates anoint their candidate, whoever that may be. It's looking like it could be Biden. It could be somebody else by the time we get to the nomination process. If we get to that, I am very concerned, not just about the future of the party, but about the future of our country. And I think it is asinine that with some of these people, country over party only goes one way. And I certainly hope that DNC and some of these, Clintonite wing, neoliberal, centrist, center-right people understand that this is not the time for them to try to anoint another candidate, that neoliberal centrism is not gonna work this time around. It didn't work last time. Why are you stupid enough to think it's gonna work this time? And I hope it doesn't come to violence in the streets. I lived it before. I don't want to go through that again. I'm really concerned about this because they show no signs of trying to listen. They just expect that they can jingle the keys in front of our face and say, Donald Trump, Russia, 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 and expect something to happen where we fall in line. I don't think we're falling in line. We sent 1,000 activists to Capitol Hill to protest for Medicare for all, and they only let one in the building to testify. So I don't think this is going to come without a struggle, and that pains me to say because we've been fighting and we've been getting crapped on in return.
Well, I mean, look back into our own pretty recent history, the 1950s and the 1960s. Look at how violent that had to get for, the Voter Rights Act to get pushed through.
Mm-hmm.
People had to die. Like, people had to go out in the streets and die for that to happen. And this
look at how many people have died for gun control to get enacted. And this is a modern fight, but there are still people dying in the streets. Black Lives Matter. There's still people dying in the streets unarmed. Flint still has dirty water.
Yeah.
There's still lead in West Baltimore. Like, this stuff doesn't get fixed. We are looking at violence in the streets. And I hope our leadership comes to their damn senses and realizes that the zeitgeist of the moment is with radical changes to not just a party, but to our country, to democracy itself.
Yeah, and I feel like Jimmy Dore said it the best.
I love Jimmy Dore.
Democratic establishment would rather lose to Donald Trump than win with a progressive. And why?
Because
of the money. Because of their donors.
Because Donald Trump makes them a lot of money. And they don't want the gravy train to stop. Nancy Pelosi admitted it. Nancy Pelosi admitted it. She said...
I love that she's primaried now. I love it.
Yes. We need to primary all of these corporate Democrats. I am so happy to see that we have so many strong primary challengers. We have one in the 2nd district. I can't give out a name yet, but I know he's running and he's really good and he probably can win. He's probably going to beat Dutch Ruppersberger. I'm so happy. For Michaela Wilkes, for the Ditch Dutch movement. I just wish we could find somebody, a strong progressive to primary, or, to primary, not only Nancy Pelosi, but Chuck Schumer when he's up as well. We need to take this party back. This ghost ship belongs to us, and we've got to show that we're willing to fight. I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a blast. Thank you so much. And you want to tell everybody where they can find you at?
Yeah, just find me on Twitter. I would give you my Twitter handle, but it's people accuse me of being Russian because it has a bunch of numbers in it. So
Well, you can just search MiriJane. That's MiriJane, and I'm sure people will find you. You're not that hard to find, especially
yeah,
with the Bernie folks starting to give you some traction here. Thank you so
yeah.
much for coming on. I really appreciated it,
Thank you for having me on.
and hope your hand gets better. By the way,
Oh, thank you.
this is why we need Medicare for all. Let's just put it out there. Let's put it out there. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Have something to say? Let us know. Send us a tweet at CCPNNetwork. Leave us a comment on our YouTube channel, the Charm City Podcast Network, or send us a tweet with the hashtag The Bern Notice. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. I'd like to thank MiriJane again for coming on the program, and I'm really glad we could do that interview. I got just one more story, but it's kind of gonna entangle three stories. We're talking corruption and chaos in all areas of Baltimore politics. We're talking local, we're talking statewide, and we're talking in Johns Hopkins University. And we'll start with former Mayor Catherine Pugh. I know that so many of you already know this story, but a lot of people don't realize corruption actually plagues both parties. Corruption is a thing that when you live in a one-party state, the corruption flows in. If you live in a Democrat-only state, like Maryland is, like Baltimore is, corruption flows into the Democratic Party even more so. Because the big money special interests in a swing state will go to the Republicans. The big money special interest groups in a red state will go to Republicans in cities, because they want to shut out the Democrats, so they are more willing to spend a lot of money to shut them out where they can. The big money special interests in a blue state go to the corporate Democrats. So the only way that we can make it so that we don't have an issue like Catherine Pugh, like Sheila Dixon, like Martin O'Malley, where all of their corruption comes out in the wash. The only thing I could really say about Stephanie Rawlings Blake is that she was a lame duck. She decided not to run again. She was kind of a weak mayor, but she definitely, out of the last four, was probably the least corrupt out of the four of them. So in Baltimore, especially, if you are the mayor, you have an inordinate amount of power. You have vast oversight compared to anywhere else in the country if you are the mayor. And you need somebody who can't be bought in that seat. You need a council that can't be bought. You need a council president who can't be bought. And right now, I'm very hopeful because the different county council races, I believe there are 3 that are open, and progressives are running for all 3 of them. And they stand a good chance of winning. We really are turning a different wing over in Maryland, and I'm very excited to be a part of it. I wanted to talk a little bit about Mary Bubala. Obviously, she said she improperly worded a question. I believe she focused way too much on, what the last 3 mayors looked like and not how they governed, which I think was her point, but I don't want to speak out of turn. She asked the wrong question. The right question is, can we find somebody of any race or gender who is not corrupt to their core? Because Baltimore has been run with an iron fist like a hustle for longer than any of the last 4 mayors have been around. It has been this way probably since the turn of the 20th century. It certainly was this way when Nancy Pelosi's father was mayor. He ran the city with an iron fist, and a lot of times that led to willful corruption because who was actually going to challenge them? And let's face it, the Republicans are wiped out here. They're not doing anything. That's for the better, don't get me wrong. But when you have one party rule and it's all the corporatists, it's stagnant. It doesn't matter as much. We need an actual progressive wing like the likes of Ryan Dorsey, like the likes of Joseph Kane, who's running, to actually go take the fight to these people. And there's a couple great progressives. I'm forgetting their names and I apologize. Shoot me an email at charmcitypodcast@gmail.com if you can think of one, or if you're part of one of their campaigns and you're trying to get a spot and trying to talk about your campaign. I absolutely will be more than happy to talk to you. But moving on, the Maryland Speaker of the House race, since Mike Bush passed away, was, you know, it caused a lot of chaos in the Democratic Party here in the state. About maybe a little more than half of the Black Caucus supported Derek Davis. Obviously, there were comments that came out referring to one of the women running, Maggie McIntosh, who it was about her race and her sexual orientation. It was definitely not something we should tolerate as a party to come out of meetings. But you know, the state's Black Caucus came out and said, "Hey, they denied it. I don't know what to believe about it, but it is what it is." And it based on this speakership. Okay, so 3 people were in the race. The state's Black Caucus supported probably the least progressive in the race, and they figured that the Republicans were going to vote as a block for the most conservative candidate, and they lined up behind that candidate. And that's dismaying because nowhere needs progressive policies more than a lot of the Black communities in the state of Maryland. So there were 3 people running. The one they made the comments about was arguably the more progressive of the 3. The state party chair, Maya Rockmore Cummings, came out and almost, put people on blast about having unity for what the Democratic caucus decides to do as far as a speaker, because we are a supermajority. It should be our decision. We've earned that. We wouldn't expect the Republicans to compromise with the Democrats to come up with something. Why should we? Hopefully, I hope that Adrienne Jones, the new Speaker of the House, is going to be more progressive than Mike Bush was. I have a feeling she will be. I'm certainly hoping that we can push more than one progressive initiative per cycle and not have them be watered down. As we saw in the last legislative session, we tried to get $15 an hour. We couldn't even get it for everybody, and it won't take effect till 2022. That's not good enough, Maryland. I expect better of a blue state than that. And I expect better of a blue state than okaying a private police force, which gets me into my next story. 8 Johns Hopkins University students were arrested by almost 100 Baltimore police officers. This is the problem. This is why Johns Hopkins should not have a private police force. If the actual public police force is any indication, they are going to quell any dissent, and they are going to absolutely respond with an egregious use of force. $55 million for a widely panned and not liked plan could easily be spent on more progressive options. They could be spent in the community. They could be spent on schools in the area. They could be, you could name anything. You could have a civic duty tour for Hopkins. You could, whatever, you name it, any kinds of social initiatives. And actually, Dr. Lawrence Brown over at Morgan State University at Be More Doc was probably the most comprehensive of those plans that I've seen. And I highly encourage, if you like my content and you subscribe over here, I highly encourage you go subscribe to at Be More Doc, because his stuff is absolutely mind blowing. He really definitely brings a well thought out plan to whatever he's talking about. And I'm really glad to call him a friend in the fight. They cannot be shown, Baltimore police and Johns Hopkins cannot be shown to use a private police force fairly. And certainly, we can't trust the ones we already have based on, okay, the drug task force planted drugs. The gun task force planted guns. We can't trust them. We can't trust them. And that is part of the problem that is endemic to being in Baltimore, to knowing, growing up, we don't trust cops here because we know the cops are corrupt here. If we could fix the culture of corruption and not have every single whistleblower that Baltimore police has had come out to the outside and leave their jobs so they could speak truth to power, if we could have that, we'd be talking about actually prison reform here. But we can't have that. And now, what's happened, Baltimore police stormed through the administrative building at, I believe, Garland Hall, I believe it is. Pardon me if I got that wrong. Now there's calls for Ron Daniels to resign. He should resign. Baltimore Brew, talking about this corruption, Baltimore Brew put out a story, I think a week or two ago, that said that Johns Hopkins officials gave Mayor Catherine Pugh $16,000 to meet a filing deadline as of January 9th, 2019. She was trying to meet a self-imposed cash. She was trying to raise more money, and her deadline was January 9th, 2019. She was trying to raise this money. And so what did Hopkins do? They gave her $16,000. When you are, and this is on top of the $80,000 in the Healthy Holly scandal from UMMS, this is egregious. This is corruption, and it can't be tolerated in our party. It can't be tolerated anywhere we find this corruption. I'm in absolute agreement with Hopkins students that the police money that they're spending needs to be spent elsewhere on programs that actually are going to help the community, because more cops and more policing has only shown to increase the incarceration rate, and we need to decrease the incarceration rate, especially in Baltimore, especially when we know the culture of corruption that Baltimore police and the history of Baltimore mayors has. We need a city council president, and a mayor who can't be bought. And might I suggest, maybe Ben Jealous? I think he would be the kind of leader that Baltimore City desperately needs to guide them out. And I know for a fact, having worked on his campaign, he believes what he says. He knows what this city needs. I trust him, and I can't say that about a whole lot of people. I can say that about some of my representatives. I can't say that about all of them. So I agree with Johns Hopkins. That $55 million needs to be spent in the community. They need to spend that to help the neediest areas of Baltimore. You know, you could go a couple blocks away from Johns Hopkins Hospital in East Baltimore, and you see an area that desperately could use $55 million for lead abatement, for new housing, to actually guarantee homes for people in this city. We need this. We need to keep the pressure up on Hopkins. We need to keep the pressure up on University of Maryland medical system, on the schools. The eds and meds, while they are where you rely when your city is in crisis, you need to hold their feet to the fire. If we do not do that, we're going to continue to flounder as a city. If we do not make sure that the police have the right priorities and start fixing the 60% of murders that don't have a conviction, and we actually start to address the gun crimes in this city, and we start to address some of the violent crime that actually is happening, and we start to address the culture of corruption and who knows what, and get them out and get them prosecuted, we're not going to move forward. So I think that's all I have. I'd like to thank you for joining me for this inaugural edition of the Bern Notice. And like I said, a lot of things are coming down the pipeline soon, so keep it posted here. I will keep you abreast of everything. You can follow me on Twitter at Justin and B Moore. You can follow the network at CCPN Network. And until next time, I bid you adieu.